Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Playbook with yours truly, Joe Trahan, along with the one, the only, the magnificent Ed Werder. Easy Ed, how we doing tonight, bud?
Doing pretty well yourself.
I'm doing great. I'm doing a lot better than the Dallas Cowboys, who are on the verge of elimination. They are virtually eliminated from the playoff chase. Unfortunately for Cowboys Nation, it becomes yet another disappointing season and one of many. Mark it 30 years now without making it back to the NFC Championship game. Now, mathematically, there's a chance, but virtually there's no chance for the Cowboys to make the playoffs. They would have to win all three. Eagles would have to lose all three. That's not going to happen. So, for all intents and purposes, your Dallas Cowboys go through yet another disappointing season. That ends in utter disappointment with an 8-point loss to a team that they were favored by 6 points, 14-point differential, as opposed to what Vegas thinks. Never a good thing, Ed.
Yeah, I think that you got the sense that they were really disappointed because they failed in a situation where they got outplayed both on offense and defense against an opponent who had just learned hours before kickoff that they were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. So the Cowboys had their entire season on the line against an opponent that should not have been more motivated or more prepared or committed to winning than they were at home. And instead, it turns into another double digit loss that was reminiscent of losing at home to Arizona, right? I mean, when they look back on this season and they see that they lost to Carolina on the road in a game they should have won, they didn't beat Green Bay when they scored 40 points at home, and these two losses to Arizona and Minnesota are going to be equally uncomfortable for them to revisit. Yeah, so now they have a losing record again. There's 6-7-1, and I guess Dak talked about it after the game that this is sort of a siren call to everybody now to just play and prepare because that's your obligation as a professional. You basically have to be what Minnesota was last night.
Yeah, they just got, the template for what they need to do. Be professionals, play your best, try and figure out a way to win when winning a game doesn't mean anything in terms of your postseason hopes and desires and what you've wanted to do all year long. But from an overall, from more of a macro perspective, Ed, the issue that I have with this team and with the organization for these last 3 decades is this movie that has seemingly endless sequels, because I've seen this movie far too many times. When the Cowboys show their ceiling to us, but when games count the most and when they face their biggest games and they have to come up big, they come nowhere near the ceiling that they've shown earlier in the year. And I'm not saying, and listen, I don't want anybody watching this to think that I'm some uncultured football fan and think that, when they beat up on, the lowly Raiders and they blow them out, that's their ceiling. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about their ability to circle the wagons, show some sense of urgency, come back, beat the Eagles, and then follow that up, with the win against a wounded but still Kansas City Chiefs team that has Patrick Mahomes. The teams that played in the previous Super Bowl, the teams that won the previous two Super Bowls, right? I mean, listen, they're not as formidable as they may have once been, but those were still quality victories. They certainly played well enough to beat, to be able to beat a team at home like the Vikings. The Cowboys should have won that game, and the fact that they couldn't summon a better effort, they couldn't summon better execution, they couldn't have better coaching. It's just the same thing that Cowboys fans have dealt with for so long, and I feel bad for Cowboys fans, Ed. I do, because I couldn't fathom just having that. It's like Groundhog Day, right? This thing's on repeat. They've had to go through it again and again, and that's once that game got in the last 5 minutes or so, I was like, here we are again after they didn't make that fourth down on 4th and 7. I'm like, here we are again. The Cowboys had an opportunity. They had a chance. They've showed some resilience, but in the end, they just showed that, they're not good enough. They're not coached well enough. The roster's not constructed good enough, and the organization isn't doing what its fan base more than deserves because they've made them the most valuable franchise on the planet.
Right. And I recall that when I was watching the docu-series from Netflix, the biggest thing I took away from that, America's team, the Gambler and his Cowboys, the Jerry Jones story, essentially. The thing
Yeah.
I took away from that, from my experience of covering those teams, was what an incredible collection of competitors, of some of the greatest players in the history of the game, and how they rose to the occasion like every time. I mean, they played their absolute best when the stakes were the highest, when the opponent was, as close to the same talent level as they had, when the games meant everything. They won all those games. And then we went through this long cycle where they couldn't get to that point, and they still haven't. But the 3 years with Mike McCarthy, where they won 12 games and disappointed in the playoffs, at least they blew out these inferior teams, especially at AT&T Stadium,
Yep.
especially if the quarterback on the other team was an unaccomplished player. Whether it was Mac Wilson or Zach Wilson from the Jets. I mean, those guys never had a chance. And then
Right.
last night, you see what they did against JJ McCarthy. I mean, has his best. How many times have the Cowboys defensively given up the opponent's best game ever or best game of the year? I know there have been 5 times where the opponent has scored its season high point total. And last night they gave up 34 points to Minnesota. Minnesota's only scored more than 34 points once, and that was against the Bengals, who, by the way, are the only defense worse than Dallas. The 2 defenses in the NFL, Joe, are giving up 30 points a game: Dallas and Cincinnati.
It's
So
awful
yeah, I
company.
mean, it really and I know we blame the defense, and I think I kind of got the sense that Schottenheimer has become a little more willing to let the defense take the fall
Oh yeah.
for its failures. Whereas the offense didn't do anything either last night. I mean, I looked this up, Joe. In these 2 losses to the Lions and the Vikings, Brandon Aubrey attempted 11 field goals in those 2 games.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean it makes sense. They would have been 3 for 8 in the red zone in these last 2 games. And in the NFL, that's just not going to get it done, especially when you have a defense like the Cowboys do. It's just not going to get it done, and they're going to end up losing like they did. And it's interesting because when you think about what this offense has shown us this year, for a lot of these games, Dak Prescott and Brian Schottenheimer have seemingly been in lockstep. It certainly feels like Schottenheimer understands how to unlock the best that there can be of Dak Prescott. We've seen it time and time again. But last night, when they knew what was coming
Yep.
in terms of pressure,
two
they
weeks in a row.
knew it was coming. Yes, exactly. They
Because
knew
against the
how it
Lions,
was
they talked
coming.
about, hey, we know this is going to be a physical game. They're going to, bang our receivers. They're going to be physical at the line of scrimmage. We got to be physical at the catch point, at the end of the route. They knew what kind of game that they were in for, and when they got there, they talked about it and said they were up for it. But when they got there, that's not what the performance reflected. And it was the same
No,
thing last night. Dak talked about, hey, I love being blitzed. I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years. His numbers supported the fact that he handles a blitz exceptionally well. And then they go out and give up what he gets pressured on 48% of his throws, the most of any game in his career. He's played 136 games. He's never been pressured a higher percentage of the time than he was last night. I think he's been
it,
pressured 37 times in these 2 games.
it's
And all the
unbelievable.
investment this team's made in the offensive line with first round draft picks, give me a break.
Yeah, no, from top to bottom. It's what I talked about. It's showing the ceiling and an inability to come anywhere near it, right? When it matters the most, and that's what hurts the most. I think for Cowboys fans, I wouldn't know because I'm not a fan, but the thing that bothers me is the fact that you had to know what they were going to want to take away. And Dak said it after the game. He said, "Well, I tried this answer and that didn't work, and I tried that answer and it didn't work, and I tried another third answer and it didn't work." And I'm like, "Wow, if you don't have the answers, that's bad." And listen, Brian Schottenheimer absolutely fell on the sword, mea culpa on 3 or 4 different occasions after that game, and he made it be known pretty crystal clear that Brian Flores absolutely whipped him in terms of schematics and
Play
coaching.
calling versus play caller, yeah.
Sure. And you just can't have it. And it was interesting because there was one play. Cowboys were around the plus 40-yard line, plus 35-yard line, and Shoddy calls like a bubble screen to the left side, and it was like just Dak had the ball for 2 seconds and he just dirted it immediately because they completely had it like flushed out. It was as if they knew what was coming, right? And it's they were guessing, trying to beat the pressure, and you just can't guess. And it was really interesting, right? Because there were some times in that game when, and it's hard to do this on the fly, but I tried my best. There were a few times when you knew that there was pressure coming up. They were given a all-out blitz, zero look, and they were just standing 10 yards back, trying to have vision and play man. And I'm just thinking to myself, how can we not build in an automatic to where you just get the ball to CD? Because if he makes one guy miss and there's
Right.
one
It's a
block,
touchdown.
it's church. It's
Right.
church. And
That's the risk, right? That's the risk of the style that the Vikings play. The zero blitz scheme is basically putting everybody close to the line of scrimmage, forcing them to identify who's coming, and they can't block them all. And you're hoping to get there before the quarterback can get an accurate ball out. And I think Dak thought he'd be able to do that, that he could go to the quick game, he could get the ball to his playmaking receivers on the outside. They'd make somebody miss, break a tackle, and take it to the house. And then Flores has to think about, well, is this the way I want to play the game, knowing that they're capable of beating me for a touchdown on any play? And that just never happened. I
it
mean,
didn't. And it was really frustrating. And I mean, they were just having Dak was just having problems making completions at one point. And listen, I will say this: not having Javonte Williams in there for blitz
right.
pickup ended up being, I think, a very big deal, Ed, that won't get talked about a lot because Hunter Lipke whiffed two or three different times, just complete whiff. Right. And then when Davis went in, when Malik Davis went in there, he
He got
got
run over.
run over a couple of times, right? So, I mean, Javante, he's dealing with, a shoulder injury. He had a stinger going. So they're taking him out. They're not trying to put all the wear and tear of those blitz pickups on him. But man, did they ever miss him? I think, his value to the team may have went up in a big way in
Right.
that game, understanding what can happen when he's not in the ball game. And listen, I think that kind of evaluation is what the Cowboys have to do over these next three games. And I do think, you know, they could know that they're absolutely eliminated from the playoffs before they even, have one snap against the Chargers, because the Eagles take on the Commanders on Saturday. Eagles win that game, division's over, we're done mathematically, the whole 9 yards. And Ed, I'm curious because I want to get your thoughts on this. If I were the Dallas Cowboys at that point, I would shut down Dak Prescott. I would shut down CeeDee Lamb. I would shut down George Pickens. I would shut down Javonte Williams, Clowney, Quinnen Williams. I would do it.
You're going
And
into preseason mode.
I am. NFL be damned. NFL be damned. Because the last thing you need is some idiotic injury. And listen,
Micah
they're,
Parsons
they're
injury,
coming
a
fast
Patrick
and furious.
Mahomes
That's
injury.
exactly right. They're coming fast and furious right now late in this season. Why risk it? I don't care about competitive balance. I don't care about any of it. You got to take care of your team first. And that's the way I'd go about it. Now, listen, to be completely fair, you uh, you have to be completely mathematically eliminated before I do it, right? Because again, you never know in this league. But once you are, that's the route I would take. What are your thoughts on that, Ed?
I guess it's offensive in terms of the integrity of the game aspect, right? Because you want to do what Dak talked about doing, and I don't. Can you talk him out of it? Can you? I mean, you heard the position he espoused last night. This is who you are as a person. This is time to show who you are as a person. This is
I,
a time to reveal, what you stand for as a
I,
competitor.
I could talk him out of it because you're also the person who's missed too much game time over the last 4 years. You're that person too, Dak,
Yeah,
and
you're
your
32.
worth.
You have an
Yeah,
injury history.
yes. Your worth is in being on the field. That's the person that you are. You're the most valuable piece on the team. And if something happens to you, you're hurting everyone for perhaps an extended period. So I'm saving you from yourself. I think I could talk him out of it. I don't know.
And the other benefit to that, obviously, is the more you lose, the better value your draft pick has, right? So
I'm
if
not even getting there, but that's the value
your
added.
pick is at 14 now, you could conceivably get into the top 10 if you were to lose these next 3 games. And I guess beyond the integrity of the game and the ability to convince these competitive guys that this is in their best interest and this is the direction you want to go and you're comfortable with it as an organization. And I don't know how Jerry's going to feel about selling that. I mean, one of the games is next week at home, so his fans have bought tickets to this game. Probably close to 100,000 of them. And, what obligation do you have to them, your fan base, ticket buying fan base? And then the other part of it is, well, what's the value to a first year head coach and his staff of using this as a foundation, the second half of this season as a foundation for next year, to start next year, to go into next year coming off a 6-2 finish? Once we got our guys on defense, we traded for Quinnen Williams and Logan Wilson, who we really don't like to play all that much, and got DeMarvion Overshown and Luke Wilson. We became a much better team. We won 6 of our last 8 games. We're going to build on that going into next season. So those are the 2 reasons I would suggest they might not do that. It's totally a practical solution. It's a dangerous game. And like you said, Dak knows that all too well. CD just learned that a week ago when he suffered a concussion and had to come out of a game. He missed 2 games earlier in the year with a sprained ankle. But yeah, in a lost season like this, the last thing you want to do is lose a franchise player, a difference maker for any part of the offseason or next season. I agree with you on that. But I'd have a hard time making that pitch, especially for 3 games. Maybe for the last one, you could justify, hey, I want to see Joe Milton. We need to evaluate him as a backup quarterback. Like, we were worried all year long that if we ever had to play Joe Milton in a game we had to win, what we were going to get. It's time for us to find out. That would be my pitch to Dak.
Yeah, no, I just, I think Dak has seen so much now. I do think I could talk him into it. He wouldn't want to do it. He'd do it, kicking and screaming. But again, it's like, okay, you say the ultimate goal is to win a championship. And if that's the ultimate goal, if that's what you really want to do, what does playing in these games gain for you? I would say nothing. And again, I watched the movie a ton of times. Not as many times as you have, Ed, but I've watched this movie a ton of times. That I think I could make that plea to him. Anything that you could do, even in these last 3 games, is not going to get you closer to a championship. It only brings the risk of getting us a lot further from a championship. And for that reason, I would say, hey, man, it's been a great season. And listen, in terms of awards and personal accolades, could he win comeback player of the game, comeback player of the year again? Perhaps, but you've already won that, Dak. So
I doubt that
need any of that,
yeah.
Right? He wouldn't care.
I would think
right?
that it would matter to Schottenheimer, right? This is your first year as a head coach.
Perhaps.
If I were him, I'd certainly rather finish 9-7-1 than 6-10-1.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but it would be something that I would at least have to consider because of the age of my quarterback. And then when we talk about evaluation mode, I'm curious about which one of these players that hasn't seen a lot of playing time that you would like to see. And I'll give you an example of, some of the guys who I think need to be out there. I mean, they spent the 4th round pick on the running back from Texas, who we all expected to see more from. And I don't like the kind of overall idea of rewarding somebody who hasn't been great at practice, obviously, but I do still need to see what he could do in NFL games. I'd throw him out there, just to see and see what he can do. What about you?
A guy I would want, quite honestly, and this guy probably fits more into the kind of guy you were talking about protecting for the future, but I need to see some DeMarvion Overshown here. Like, I need to get him back to playing and dominating and pressuring the passer and running sideline to sideline, delivering big hits and making big plays like he did before this injury, because we haven't seen that yet. And he's probably one of the guys that you'd be, most adverse to risking in a situation like this. Maybe you wait and see that next year, early in the year, when he's, progressed that much more from a health standpoint. I think you've got to resolve this corner situation.
Yep.
I think you need to make decisions on Tyler Guyton. Is he your left tackle or is he not your left tackle? You need
Yep.
to draft a left tackle. I mean, you made a huge investment in the interior of your offensive line, the interior defensive line, but you have all kinds of questions on the at all the perimeter positions except for wide receiver, assuming they bring Pickens back. So I guess the two corners, Carson and Ravel, I'd want to see a lot more of them. I'd want to see Wanye Thomas play safety. I'd activate him. So those are the guys that I would mostly want to see. But yeah, I think Jaden Blue's a guy who needs to play if you're going to go into this mode. And again, that's contrary to the big culture that Shoddy's emphasizing and is enforced against Trayvon Diggs. To Trayvon Diggs' detriment. He thinks he's healthy enough to play, and they won't let him play. And we'll see where that goes this week. That's an interesting story for this week. But and I think defensively, you just got a whole lot of things you got to try and resolve. Like how can you trade for two middle linebackers and not have a middle linebacker?
Yeah, that one makes no sense, right? Kenneth Murray comes in, and I just they're just some of these plays, Ed, where I mean, what are we doing? I mean, it's like, are you trying to guess the wrong hole? The touchdown play where he just, I mean, the play's coming right to
The
him.
C.J. Ham
Yes, the
fullback
Ham
dive play.
touchdown. Yeah, I mean, it's coming right to him, and he sees an empty hole, and he just jumps in it, and I'm like, the hole's empty for a reason, bud. I mean, it's just awful. I mean, it's just very basic play that you wouldn't expect, you know, fr- from from a veteran in the NFL. And again, a guy that Eberflus wanted to bring in because he's supposed to know the scheme. How can you tell me that that's supposed to be a guy who knows the scheme when time and time and time again he just guesses at the wrong gap? It is, I mean, it's mystifying to me how that can happen.
And last night was the first time, like Jerry talked about it. We're gonna see more Logan Wilson, the linebacker they obtained from Cincinnati, supposed to be very instinctive, knows the gaps, gonna shut these run plays down. First of all, he can't even get on the field after they acquire him in the middle of the season at the trading deadline. Then last night he finally starts, but who starts the second half? Murray's back out there again.
Unbelievable. It just feels like there's some dysfunction, some disagreement in the room, about who belongs where. And
Who the coaches have confidence in,
yep,
and how that's justified within the organization, within the coaching staff. And, I guess Jerry's now for the first time suggested he might decide to make a change at defensive coordinator, even though he supposedly has recognized the importance of continuity in that position on that side of the ball after seeing what's happened now with Matt Eberflus being the third defensive coordinator in 3 years. If you replace him, now you're looking at four coordinators in 4 years. And again, I understand the criticism of Matt Eberflus that he deserves a lot of it. Is it all his fault? I don't think so. I don't. You don't trade a generational pass rusher, your best player, most versatile player on defense, a week before the season when your coordinator has been expecting to creatively find a way to use him all year long and build the defense around him. And then all of a sudden, a week before the season, doesn't have him and doesn't have a player in that capacity until you trade for Quinnen Williams 8 weeks later. So, and then the whole middle linebacker thing that we just talked about. He's supposed to be a linebacker expert. That's the position he used to coach. But the front office is, responsible for this disaster on that side of the ball too. Because how do you hire Matt Eberflus, who was here as an assistant for 7 years, and the personnel you have, so you should be able to project how that fits into what he wants to, the way he wants to play. So how do you as a front office justify that decision? How did you not see that this was not going to work?
yeah, and I mean, listen, we all know Diggs and Bland are both man corners. I mean,
And so is
I,
Ravel.
right. I'm not a coach. I'm not a coach, but I know that much. And listen, yeah, they're pros and they should be able to acclimate. But when they don't do it as fast as you think they can, you can't then be just surprised. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this could happen. Well, it could happen, because it's part of their skill set, right? Now, I think the issues with Diggs, and I do want to delve deeper into that, Ed. I think those issues run deeper, and I just I think that this is going to be a divorce in the off season, and he will be a post June 1 cut. I mean, it's just the way it's going. I think the Cowboys are just making sure that they don't run afoul of the Players Association or anything in the CBA in terms of them continuing to say that they don't think he's healthy when he says he's 100% healthy, right?
They
I
put
just
him in a position where he's the one saying, I'm healthy.
yes,
I'm
yes,
fully healthy. So
yes.
then when they waive him, he can't go complain that, well, now you're obligated to pay my contract next year because I can't pass a physical. Well, wait a minute. You said you were healthy.
You said you're healthy, right?
Repeatedly said you were healthy.
That's right, 100%, mind you. So I think they're just playing that game, and and it'll play out. And listen, none of us knows what happened about this crazy concussion and all these stories that we're hearing about that, some of which are absolutely insane. And
But
so,
one of those kind of stories must be true, or else they would have just told us.
right? Some things so wild that they can't even broach the subject, right? And again, these are the dysfunctional kinds of things that end up bringing down, defenses like this, and things are said in the room, and there are fractures in the group, and sometimes that harm can be irreparable. And I think that's the seminal question that Brian Schottenheimer has to ask: is the harm that he senses from what happened with this defense, is it irreparable in terms of Flus staying on to next year? And you and I both know what a what a good dude Shotty is, and how much he stands up for his players and his fellow coaches. And he knew that a million cameras were on him on the sideline yesterday. He knows that it's a Sunday night game, and he still let his frustration be completely apparent to anyone who knows anything about body language and football. And I found that incredibly interesting.
Right? Because earlier in the year, he was talking about having to get involved in their meetings, and he was saying, "I know I can sympathize with him. I've been in that position before as an offensive coordinator, and the head coach would come into my meetings and supervise my meetings and make suggestions, and it's always can be very uncomfortable, right? You feel you're being undermined and evaluated in an unfair way." And he was openly supportive of Eberflus at that time, and so was Jerry, who was more responsible for the fact that Matt Eberflus is defensive coordinator than the head coach is in this own dysfunctional little situation we have so often here in Dallas. And so, yeah, how they decide to conclude that whole thing, I think that'll be one of the fascinating stories early in the offseason.
Yeah, because listen, and you know this probably better than most people in the country. You know how Jerry doesn't like to eject coaches, right? Even when he doesn't want to keep them, he wants to try and give them a window to find another job and all these other kind of things. But this is a situation with Eberflus where that couldn't happen, right? Because
And
technically he's still under contract.
well, the
So
interesting thing with him is we all know Jerry doesn't like to pay coaches who don't work for him. But I assume that Eberflus's salary is mainly being paid by the Bears. He's,
that's a
he's
good
still
point. That
he's
is a
still
good
getting his
point.
head coaching salary from the
That's a good
Bears
point, Ed.
for a year or two.
That's a very good point. So you're right. And in that sense, maybe it would ease that thought process that Jerry normally has about letting coaches go. Maybe he would be more amenable, right, to letting it happen, knowing that Flus is taken care of with some of that head coaching money that he's still drawing from Chicago. That's a very interesting point, right? Because man, Jerry doesn't normally talk like he did last night when he doesn't have a notion and
When he
he
doesn't
claimed.
have to.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And he made it. And listen, this was after the season's done. This wasn't
Yeah,
like a
exactly.
motivating factor, right? To
Yeah.
try and motivate to get a
Right.
push down the stretch. That's not what that was. So, I mean, I find it really interesting. And I will be shocked if the Cowboys don't have their fourth consecutive defensive coordinator in as many years when we go to training camp next year.
Well, we saw a defensive coordinator get fired today in New York whose numbers are similar to Dallas's, but worse. Or better. I'm sorry, Dallas's are worse than
Right.
theirs. And the Jets still moved on from Steve Wilks.
Right, right. Wilkes is a name. I don't know if he's a name that Jerry would entertain, but it's if
How
he
about if we
does
let
let Flus
Shoddy
go.
hire the coach?
I, no
Let's let
way. Wait,
let's let
wait. Is
Shoddy.
that
Let's do a more
is,
traditional
is
hire
that
and
is
let
that
the
how it's
head
supposed to
coach
work?
decide who's on his staff.
Is that how it's supposed to work, Jerry? That's not how it works. I mean, I get the people. No, you're right. No, it's a good point. Um, I do think Jerry might be a little gun shy after Mike McCarthy brought in Mike Nolan. That left a mark.
And then Jerry brought in Mike Zimmer.
And then Jerry brought in Mike Zimmer. That didn't work either. I mean,
Mike brought
listen,
in Dan Quinn. That
yeah,
worked.
that worked. It did. It did. I mean, strike one, but hey, he hit the next one out of the park, and the Cowboys would die for anything close to what DQ was able to put out there. Um, man, I don't see Eberflus coming back. I just don't. But let's see, because again, I think there are some things going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to. I think there's information, and I think I don't know how much of it has to do with this and how much of it directly affects Flus, but there's stuff going on that we haven't been able to. You know all that stuff that once the season's over,
People
and
start talking.
you could nuzzle up and you know, maybe see somebody out somewhere and you could just, get a little more
Right?
information, a
They're
little more,
not sitting up at
more
the press
flow.
conference table with the
Yes.
team
Yeah.
camera running and the team website
Yeah.
employees recording
Yes.
every
Yeah.
word. Yeah,
Yeah.
we might
Exactly.
be able to get a little more casual contact than that.
That's right. We need it. We need it. Well, listen, man, it is the fastest 30 minutes in
We're in
sports.
overtime right now, Joe.
That's right. It's the playbook on WFAA Plus. We appreciate you joining us. We'll be back again here next Monday night. For the great Ed Werder, I'm Joe Trahan. Thanks for tuning in on WFAA Plus. We will see you next week.